We're going to open with Dave Alcock. He's been interested in flash fiction ever since 2016, when he received Flash Fiction Forward, edited by James Thomas and Robert Shepard. And he got that as a surprise gift. He read the first page and was hooked and has been ever since. His work has been published by Everyday Fiction, Flash Frontier, and McQueen's Quinterly, as well as a number of other excellent e-zines, and can be found in 2 books published by Ad Hoc Fiction. He works as an editor and lives with his wife and 2 children in Devon, England. David, you're up.
Super. Thanks very much, Paul. Hello, everyone. Those of you that I haven't said hello to yet, thanks for having me, Paul, and it's lovely to be here, all of you. So what Jane has said about sort of being new to poetry is a little bit worrying to me, because actually I'm going to read a couple of poems today, and I'm not new, I'm quite new to poetry too in some respects.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to read 5 pieces. 2 of them are micros, 2 are poems, and one of them is something which Jane McQueen and I decided was a microfiction sequence, but I'll leave you guys to sort of, you particularly, Francine, perhaps to really pontificate and tell me exactly what these forms are. However, I'll get on with it, all of you. So I'm beginning with some micros. They're drabbles, they're short, not strictly, but here we are. First one's called Fall. I remember the sparks of the bonfire, which scattered through darkness like schools of small fish. And I remember the flowing scarves of flame, which heated our chests through our damp plastic coats. I remember those dahlias in the sky, our brightening faces, the glittering petals. And later, the shivering fingers, the match and the matchbox as we huddled beside the wood. The burning fuse that raced like a raindrop to the box of danger that I held in my hand. The smiting flash, the light speed excision. I remember the cast. I remember laughing at my stump. It's funny. There's so much I remember, but your words of guidance, I seem always to forget. This one's called Edgeland. Sometimes he would be there in the morning and he would look down at the lights of the pit. He would think about his father and his brother, and he would wonder what it was that they were doing. Were they digging? Were they drilling? Were they drinking from their flasks of tea? Today, the pit was gone, but every now and then he looked down at the valley. There were roads there now, and street lights that led to a car park and some out-of-town shops. But the memories kept coming in flakes, like the skin of his mouth after drinking boiling water. Their bladed edges scraping burns on his tongue, their vanishing substance being crushed between his teeth. So this is a poem called Broken. I can see it, the house of my neighbor. I bore the news of my first daughter's birth. I was alone, wife and child in hospital. We'd only been there next door a few months. It's a girl, I said. We're calling her Jasmine. My neighbour's friend put his hand on her back. Her eyes glistened. She sighed on the sofa. She held her knees. Her legs wouldn't stand. They first told me as we perched on the roadside, our cars parked, bags from Tesco in the boot. Like Suzanne, who is no longer with us. The claws broke like a bird's egg on a curb. There was a photo of Suzanne in the hallway. She wore red lipstick and a sequined dress. At 29, she lost a battle with cancer. It had happened just before we'd moved in. Today, my daughter is brilliant and glittering. She starts the first teenage year of her life. But celebration is joined by this memory. And to my joy comes my pity and my dread. This next poem is called Moonlight. Hopping gardens on the edge of the city, circled by darkness, the moon in the sky. We fall off walls into thickets of mystery. We don't see thorns or knife points of glass. You cry out, put your hand in a moonbeam. Its outline flows, and I know you are hurt. I gasp with fright when I see the blood racing, a slash on your lifeline that hews to the bone. I still see you on my brother's 8th birthday, inside that tunnel made of sheets round the bed. We eat biscuits beneath a low cotton ceiling, see together how the world can be changed. After cake and candles, your dad comes to get you. You stand on the table with your newspaper sword. I see your defiance, your father's bewilderment. Even on the doorstep, you continue to resist. Then, at the park, we begin throwing conkers. One blinds my brother, and a small war begins. Our enemies run, but you are too cunning. You hide beneath leaves, and you lie there and wait. When they return, you ambush the leader. You chase him straight through the gate of his house. We hear the knell of a head on a washing pole. We watch in awe as you scythe back out. When I last see you, you're dark-eyed and sullen. Drugs imprison you. I know what they've done. In the glare of this scene, your vitality flickers. Our smiles still meet as we drift from our bond. And when they tell me on the phone what's happened, about the methadone and your body on the couch, it's you that shows me life's jeweled transients, sharp as moonlight on the blood of your wound. Finally, there's just one piece here, a microfiction sequence. It's called Equanimity, which I think means grace under pressure. Swaying as the ambulance carves corners, its wheels bruising tracks on the newly gritted roads, his son far away, his heart still pounding. He imagines falling flakes, a white world, a yellow moon. Home. His voice is desperate. Please, will you take me? He won't agree, won't consent. He knows it's close, but nothing can stop it. Now he's a child. He just wants to run. There's an envelope on the overbed table. You can take it. It's signed, he says. At the door, his son looks and pauses, nods and smiles. Day gleams in his eyes. Before the blooded body, before the rushing of doctors, before all the alarms that blare like World War III, he speaks final words, gasps quickly, "I'm going under." A hand holds his arm. It is impossible to breathe. Cul-de-sac, bungalow, kitchen, morning paper delivered, radio alarm come and gone. On a doily on the worktop, the week's drugs neatly organized. Objects keep twitching with an immortal wish to live.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Our next reader is Jane Martin. She's a Pushcart Best Small Fictions and Best Microfictions nominee and a recipient of Vestal Review's Vera Award. She's the author of Tender Cuts, a collection of microfiction from Vine Leaves Press, and the Daddy Chronicles memoir of a fatherless daughter, published this year by Whiskey Tip Books. Jane.
Thank you. I have to follow that. Okay. This first piece is called Consider the Dawn. It's for Ellie. A raspberry wave splashing onto a blank canvas of possibility. Sunflowers turn their faces to the east, eager to sip from the rising sun, knowing nothing of the indigo of sorrow that weighs upon my heart. Taken much too soon, your loss still a fresh wound festering regret for all I could have done better. I drown in the silence, force myself to rise and step into the day. It is a gift, this life, each moment, as fleeting as the flight of fireflies. I will be like the sunflowers, my face to the sun following its journey across a serene sky, one breath in, one out, repeat, trusting in the passage of time to heal, bowing my face to the west, where the sun drops into tomorrow as I await the dawn of another day to come. This one is called Ode à la Dame de Fer. You rise into the pristine Parisian sky, a tower of engineering marvel. The span of your gaze sweeping over the city of lights. The mothership, I call you, because you call me home. I arrive from afar once again to rest beneath your skirt of steel on a carpet of emerald green, Champ de Mars, where lovers sip Sancerre and children do cartwheels with no thought of a day when those will no longer be possible. My heart tunes itself to the music of a language not my own, yet deeply known, as if in another life I had lived and died in your embrace. It will be here on the banks of the Seine that I will let my hair grow gray. This one is called Adrift. Fog snakes under the Golden Gate, steals the city from view. Her mind adrift on a churning sea, leaves her unsteady in the present moment. A breeze sends her sails to the more familiar ports of the past, where our family resides in clearer skies, and names, faces, dates float to the surface. She is the last link to my mother, her aunt, decades gone. In fading photos, she is 10, while I still curl inside my mother's womb. It matters not that the stories she tells she has told many times. I treasure those visits into my mother's past, envy the time she had with her that I did not. At 83, she no longer navigates these waters with ease. Currents pull her thoughts under, questions answered, asked again and again, each time the shoreline slipping further from view. My impatience, a rising tide, I struggle to suppress. When 3 times she comes to my room to say the same goodnight, to repeat, I love you, I love you, I love you, I drown in the salt of my tears. And this last one, some of you may have heard, it's the prologue to the Daddy Chronicles, and it's called Ode to the Lone Sperm. Eager little swimmer, perhaps my competitive nature comes from you, who didn't get the memo that fertilization was not my father's intent. Content as he was to have my mother all to himself, but you failed to notice your brethren's sperm treading water, not even trying to tell you to ease up, little fella. This guy's just going through the motions. Motions, where emotions would never bloom. And in your haste to win the race, a child growing in the shadow of his withholding, a child always wondering why. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have shared your Daddy Chronicles with anybody I can corral when they come by the house.
What did you say?
I've shared the Daddy Chronicles.
Oh, you shared. Oh, okay. So
Yeah. And it's always a little quiet afterwards. And that's a plus. Pat Ferran is a writer in Milwaukee, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Didn't mean to move you, Pat. His work was selected for Best Small Fictions 2021 and Best Microfiction 2021 anthologies, and for the Wigleaf Top 50 Very Short Fictions 2022. He also received the 2021 Mythic Picnic Prize in Fiction. You're up.
Thank you so much, Paul. Just going to read one short flash fiction piece that was published the past week in Pithead Chapel. It's called To the Shortage of Lifeguards That Will Live in This Rill. There's this shortage of lifeguards. It's a pandemic related thing, a training thing, a more kids don't know how to swim now thing. And so there's all this life unguarded, all these people drowning, their kids mostly, in a river of an instant, all these parents becoming not parents. So they're closing pools, they're closing beaches, they're damming streams, they're draining lakes, but there are so many waterways, too many to close, too many that are lifeguardless. Some of us now not parents, we got to thinking. This shortage of lifeguards, it must be going through a lot. It's seen things, we figured. It needs nurturing, we believed. Parenting. There's this unattended rill, a shallow one, a slow trickle. Maybe it could be a place for the shortage to chill, to settle down even, to reimagine itself, to become less of a shortage, less of itself. And eventually, maybe, there'd be more lifeguards, less unguarding, less drowning, fewer not parents. Who exactly are you? The shortage of lifeguards asked us. Fathers and mothers, we said, or we were. Didn't ask who you were, the shortage said. We offered to build the shortage of lifeguards a home, a little one, little enough to drop in a little lifeguard chair we'd craft from cottontails that grow near the shallow rill. Little enough, yet big enough to support the shortage on its reimagination journey. We had enough twigs and plenty of twist ties to build such a home, we said. Go for it, the shortage said. We put on some music and got to building. But when Otis Redding got to singing These Arms of Mine, it triggered one of us to remember the face of the father of a Neil Armstrong elementary school boy who'd waded into a rushing river. The father's arms reaching and reaching and reaching toward the rushing. And when we heard Marvin Gaye singing Save the Children, plead, 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 singing the word babies, our hearts sank like a self that knows what it knows. Reimagine what now? The shortage said to the rhythm of the rushing and Marvin's pleas. What or who? Shrieked a stressed out tadpole, swimming toward safe and soundless, the rill's 24-hour convenience mart. His tail not yet long enough to help him elude a predator fish in pursuit, the tadpole disappeared into the murk before reaching safe and soundless. Sorry for making this about us, we said, the self in us flickering the way the light on the mart's neon sign fishtailed into the rill. The who we are now, not yet apparent, not even to the night. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Ann Weisgerber was born in Orange, New Jersey, to middle-class parents. She's a Frost Place Scholar and Reynolds Fellow. Her prose poetry and essays appear in 3 a.m. magazine, Diagram, Yamasi, Refroy, the Alaska Star, Essaying Daily, and Smoke Lung Quarterly. She is the assistant series editor for the annual Wiggly Top 50 contest.
Thank you, Paul. And boy, I'm really enjoying this group. Real proud to be part of it. I'm just going to read 4 very short pieces, less than 900 words total. They're actually all in draft stage, but I like sharing things. Reading them and hearing them helps. The first is called Dubliners. Beckett, she understood, kept a phone with a red button to prevent calls coming in. A green button allowed them. Only his closest friends knew this. Gogarty, she knew, avoided the gallows by plunging into an ice-cold Liffey under a hail of bullets, promising the river a gift of 2 swans. When Joyce married Barnacle, rumor had it, she was a man killer. They met on Bloomsday. He feared, she loved them. Now, you might be interested to know, those of you trying poetry, all of my stories start as poems and I kick out the line breaks. I send them out both as poems and prose to different markets and just see who takes what. This one is called Falcon. A flight can be orderly and the rest disarrayed because thermodynamics and memory and the cosmos are our Big Bens. Why then did Hawking embrace those raspy two-note vocals? His film, your film too, will never run backward to make the broken dish whole again. And so it seems he's an epiphany. He used to be in high order, and that mechanical voice was his trademark, he would say. He was a good clock, but his disorder increased. We are all good clocks. Let us hope then, when we finally break, our very best voices find us somewhere in time. Lost word. What word is better than stockade? It's not phalanx. Is it a pale? To be beyond the pale was to be away from secure protection, to surpass grace palely. Cry for what you wish. There were strategically placed items, pistols, totems at Grace's feet. I'll study them. What was the name for the space between a set of feet? Like at a jeweler or a dealer of fine and antique watches, you know, the space between the oxygen of the spaceship and the vacuum of space. Not exactly an airlock. I'll look later. There was a sound of a horn at the intersection 80 stories below, under the general sounds of wind and high-rise electrical chatter. Baying. Is it a bay? They had it in that Softy movie with Adam Sandler. Dave, my mind is going. Let it percolate. Out of the corner of my eye, there is a flash of movement that's not a floater, not a trick of the light. The apartment below had a clean out. The occupant was nobody. Had there been tapping? Might have been neighbors in 81E hitting the headboard, the souls at 81G dumping plates into the garbage, the characters above in 81E hitting, above in 82F hitting a table leg with a vacuum. I have a plush carpet, so I never thought of 80F. Now they're vanished. There is another movement just out of view. It's very sad when things get stuck. Glue traps. The strength it must take to lift a head and cry out. And this is my favorite of the four. It's called Apricots. This summer I was in Santa Fe for a while, and I happened to be there when all the apricot trees were just dropping fruit. I've never been in a place where branches were so laden with fruit that it was just falling all the time. So this is my Santa Fe story. Apricots. Our parents ordered school pictures. We brought in envelopes on picture day. Some parents wrote checks, others tucked in bills and coins exact, and all of us sealed the envelope with a lick. We'd purchase our faces, good, calm, and clean. Picture day came. Our dressers sang the call of the void. Our mothers, they forgot what to do with our hair. On picture day, we wore the same blouse as next year, the same slacks, skirts, knee highs. It was the one day we wore no uniform, no blue suit, no plaid. The children said cheese. It wasn't long before envelopes arrived. Oh, Here were big teeth and cracked curls and faded bruises. We all got autograph books and heard the call of the void, pencils in hand, lines jerky. We pushed the doors to meet with our bullies and those we bullied behind them, coins and bills. We stood there, fingers tapping. We became clever. We said hags. We exchanged our autograph books. We called one another ugly. We switched books around and commented on ourselves. We were mean. We made no plans to see one another, only what mothers arranged, and we will suffer for this. Yes, for this we will suffer. We should have smiled at each magnificent old soul. And we should have said, don't worry at your hair. You are beautiful. Cap a pie. And signed our names like movie stars. We should have drawn our names as we were. Branches laden with sweet fruit. V's and V's and V's. And remember, was it yesterday? We were good earth, our unhappy kernels hidden, and our sweet waters clean. Thank you.
Well, that was all right, Ann. Thank you. Yeah. Jill Loomis is a flash fiction writer, F-bomb fan, and a New Yorker. Her first piece was published in Storge magazine, and one received honorable mention in the 2021 Craft Flash Fiction Contest. You can find her at Jill R. Loomis. Jill, unmute and you're up. Gotta unmute. There you go.
Okay, here we go. Hold on just a sec. Okay. This is called Please Join Me for Soup and a Nap in the Driveway. Your grandmother is taking you in, he said, flung the box of everything I had left into the trunk and slammed the lid. I was still wearing the noisy foil blanket and I had to pee but was afraid to say. From the back window, I watched the road spill out from under us until I dozed. When I woke up, my father was gone and a hefty woman was hauling me onto her shoulder and into her bright kitchen. Grandmother planted me in front of a bowl of what looked like soup and ordered me to eat every drop. Between mouthfuls, I peered down at her sturdy shoes, the thick bandages wrapped around her legs, and into her lap where I saw something moving in her apron pocket. She reached down at the same time I gasped and jumped up, knocking the chair over and spilling liver-colored broth all down my front. I laughed when a kitten's tiny head peeked out from her cupped hand and mewed. She said it was mine, except for 1 hour before dawn. Grandmother told me she manufactured smart cats for the United States of America. Tri-colored calicos with hidden cameras programmed to record 24/7 and report suspicious behavior to law enforcement. In the barn before dawn, she collected precious calico elixir and installed the electronics, highly classified work requiring expert skill and a top-level security clearance. I was tempted to spy, but the barn door was padlocked and the windows were boarded up. I had been sickly and pale since birth, and my hair was singed off in the fire. But with grandmother's attention and bowls of miraculous soup, I grew as sleek and strong and colorful as my calico, sporting abundant new swaths of black, white, and orange fur. When I wasn't recovering from stomach aches or having my fur harvested, My calico and I chased mice through the fields, climbed trees, and stretched out on the driveway to nap in the sun. At supper time, grandmother sat with me until I finished my soup and admired my luxurious pelt. I missed my calico in the hour before dawn, and I was curious. So I climbed out the window, down the trellis, and peeked into the barn through a knothole. A multitude of cats, including mine, frolicked and played and tried to climb grandmother's legs. She was bent over a conveyor belt, dressing one cat after another in a tiny calico fur coat to hide the circuit board and camera kit taped to its belly. When a cat shat, their droppings fell through a grate into a steaming vat of herbs and spices. Pardon me. And the resulting slurry was strained and the precious elixir funneled through loopy tubes into bottles. At sunrise, I had to scamper away or get caught. That morning, while I ate a bowl of miraculous soup, grandmother dabbed oatmeal paste on my rash from the poison ivy covered trellis and scolded me for sneaking out. If I followed orders, we could be partners now that Project SmartCat was on the cusp of operational capability. HQ requisitioned twice as much product, and grandmother needed me to increase the production of miraculous soup and recruit more kids with fur-bearing potential. The soup was mainly kidney beans, tomatoes, and garlic, with 500 milligrams of calico elixir to promote thick and shiny fur. I cooked for days and froze gallons of miraculous soup to feed myself and the dozens of hand-picked foster children scheduled to arrive by military convoy. And then I think I'm going to read my poem, my one and only poem.
Go for it, Jill.
This is called Alligator Dream. I draw down the moon, shroud the stars, render the leafy canopy black. Raise my hand to hush screaming night birds, insect timpani. I breathe in wild loveliness of rain smacking wet ground, scents of yeasty sawgrass, stink of animals, a stagnant lily pond. In the muddy confusion of land and water, I seek the river rushing toward my nemesis. I snake past cypress groves, trees blighted by moss, bark hanging in strips like flayed skin, where nocturnal creatures gorge, predators sleep. Creeping light transforms dark stain overhead into faint blue-gray. I plunge deep and the current embraces me. At dawn, I float naked in liminal space, shameless in my disregard for modesty, hungry for something carnal, savage. Luxuriating in a pool of my own heat, I am aroused by my lover's cracking jaws, his teeth tearing tissue and bone, rolling me under until I surrender. My body without its fire will pale, decay. I will be nourishment for orchids, roseate spoonbills, iridescent dragonflies. And one more quick one. Oops. This is called my first New York apartment. New to Manhattan and broke, I agreed to $500 a month rent to climb a fire escape 5 flights up and enter my room through a window wedged open with an empty tuna can in case my roommate's girlfriend was there because she'd only have sex with him when they were alone. I wrote "slippery when wet" on the back of an envelope and taped it to the top step, but it fell off in the rain. So one drunken night, I skidded across the landing, hit a wrought iron guardrail, and knocked myself out. I jerked awake, flat on my face, staring into the dark 5 stories below. My bladder ached from over-clenching, waiting for girlfriend to leave because peeing in a bottle was simply beneath my dignity. I demanded a rent reduction and a text alert when girlfriend was going to be in residence. We shook on $40 less per month, but no to the texts. He said, how could he know when she'd be in the mood? The last time I slipped, I landed howling on a broken leg outside the second floor window of a nice lady who patted my hand while we waited for the ambulance and told me her sister-in-law had a place for rent. Advertised as a furnished garden studio, it was one dark room down 3 steps at root vegetable level in an old brownstone, with access to an outdoor cement slab surrounded on 3 sides by a chain link fence. When I stuck my head out, a neighbor's dog charged and slammed himself against the section, bowed out by his frequent battering already. A maroon sofa bed, rubbed bald, sat centered. A tippy floor lamp provided some light. The kitchen was a table in the corner with a hot plate, microwave, 1 pot, 1 pan, paper plates, styrofoam cups, and a handful of plastic forks. The bathroom sink was conveniently located 2 steps away for brushing teeth and washing dishes. I pictured myself on the maroon sofa, resting my broken leg on a 6-pack, looking up through the barred window at the sidewalk and the parade of shoes and socks, dog feet and skateboards. I said I'd take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Very enjoyable. Sandra Arnold is an award-winning writer who lives in New Zealand. She's the author of 5 books, including The Ash, the Well, and the Bluebell, the Caro Press, New Zealand, Soul Etchings, Retreat West Books, UK, and Sing No Sad Song, Canterbury University Press, New Zealand. Her short fictions have been widely published and anthologized internationally. She has received nominations for the Best Small Fictions, Best Microfictions, and the Pushcart Prize. She has a PhD in creative writing from Central Queensland University, Australia. Sandra.
Thank you, Paul. I've got 2 flash fictions today. Both of them are based on trees, or the characters are trees. The idea came from, in my garden, I have a lot of huge macrocarpa trees, and they sometimes take on a life of their own. So this one is called The Seventh Son. When my mother's new boyfriend moved in, I kept out of his way by hiding in the garden of a derelict house. The garden was full of trees, but the one I loved most was a 100-year-old macrocarpa called Septimus. The lightning that killed the other 6 macrocarpas had sliced off one of Septimus's branches, leaving a gaping hole. This was enlarged over the years by birds, small animals, wind and rain, until it extended down the entire length of the trunk, ending in a deep hollow beneath the roots. When things got bad at home, I'd hide in the hollow among the bones until the boyfriend gave up looking for me. After Septimus signaled the all clear, I'd climb onto a branch and watch the swallows dive and dart, while Septimus told me his stories. By the time I returned home, the boyfriend and my mother were too drunk to notice. Septimus told me about birds he'd given a home to, boys he'd flung off branches for stealing eggs, robbers who'd hidden jewels in his hollow trunk. When they returned to retrieve the stash, they found the hollow was deeper than they'd realized. Some gave up, but some climbed in and slithered down to the bottom. When they tried to climb back out, they got tangled up in roots. Most people avoided walking past the garden at dusk because they said the noise of the wind in the trees didn't sound like wind in the trees. The boyfriend said only morons believed that. I told him nobody could accuse him of having an imagination. After that little confrontation, I fled to the garden. When Septimus saw my bruised eyes and bleeding nose, he drew his breath from the depths of the earth and held me close. He sang of Kereroo and Tui and bellbirds and bees and moonlight and possums and the smell of rain. When his song ended, he outlined his plan. All I had to do was to sit on the fork between two branches. When the boyfriend came looking for me, he would shine his torch around the garden. He would see me sitting in the tree and yell at me to get down. He hated to be ignored. He would leap over the fence and start climbing the tree. In the shadows, he wouldn't see the hole. Septimus said he would do the rest. And the other tree story is called Below Ground. It wasn't because of the time she sat in a cafe holding her head to stop it splitting in two, with the screeching of buses and cars and screaming police sirens and people shouting into phones. It wasn't the last team meeting with its exhortations to set higher goals to maximize profits, or the day she unraveled in the gym at the sight of perfect bodies chasing greater perfection. It wasn't the media photos of world leaders beating their chests like enraged gorillas, threatening the destruction of the world, or headlines about lethal plagues. It was one single moment after weeks of color-leaching rain. It was the exact moment the sun burst out of a sky so blue that everything shone, and the mountains had purple shadows under snow-white peaks, and light and shade were sharply delineated. It was in that moment that her memory gave her the moon in the morning sky, when she stepped outside to go to school, and the way she'd called for her mother to come quickly, and her mother's expression changing from panic to relief to amusement, that it was only the sight of the moon making her child go wild with joy. And this memory, surfacing when it did, was the reason she threw out her makeup and donated her fine clothes and killer heels to a charity shop, and left her job and the cacophony in the city to live in solitude in a tiny cabin in the woods. She grew her hair long and tied it back from her face. She drank water from the stream and baked bread and grew vegetables and planted fruit trees and kept hens for eggs and a goat for milk. She had all the music she wanted in the wind in the trees, the singing of birds and the hooting of owls. She sang and danced in the moonlight until she was old, and then she preferred stillness and the sound of the hedgehogs and mice rustling in the dry leaves. When the day came when she knew, as she knew it would, she sealed herself in a hollow tree. Over time, everything she'd ever been, thought, felt, said and done seeped into the soil. New roots thrust into the earth, branches stretched to the sky. Birds built nests and raised young and dropped seeds on the ground, from which wildflowers spread and teemed with bees. From time to time, lost and dispirited escapees discovered the cabin and stayed for a while. They drank from the stream, ate fruit from the trees, and honey from the wild hives. On their return to the world, they told stories of hearing singing at night that soothed their heart. They swore they'd seen a woman with long hair dancing in the dark. But after listening to the counter-arguments of others, they convinced themselves it was only the wind they'd heard. and what they believed was a woman dancing with joy. Must have been a tree swaying in the wind. Thank you.
Sandra, thank you. Is there going to be a whole collection of tree stories? There is. Karen Sharper's flash fiction appears in 75 international literary magazines, journals, and anthologies, including Bending Genres, Cabinet of Heeds, Sea Cows, Ekphrastic Review, Fiction Southeast, New World Writing, Spelk, and 3 Best Microfiction nominations. She is editor of the award-winning flash anthology, The Group of 7 Reimagined, contemporary stories inspired by historic Canadian paintings, Heritage House 2019. Sharper curates the Vancouver Flash Fiction, an online resource hub, and Miramachi Flash, a monthly literary column. In her spirit time, she's a seasoned family therapist. Karen.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to read 2 microfiction. The Dead Mother. Mother had an older sister which she hid from us because she feared she was nicer and would get all the attention. She hid lots of things from us, our mother. I always wondered why she never joined us in the pool, never a swimmer, until walking through the parkade one day, Mother tripped on a crack and her high-heeled shoe fell off, exposing toes that fanned like a seal's flipper. I saw her eyes flash with horror, and without skipping a beat, she asked me what I wanted for dinner. Mechanically, rambling off a list of Frigidaire items we needed to pick up at the market. I knew this tactic meant she didn't want to go there, but the stark image of her flipper explained so much going forward. From then on, I was on the lookout for hidden qualities that would explain other proclivities. Her penchant for cashews over lettuce, tomatoes over salty fish, summers on Elk Island, and never but never wintering on the northern tundra. I wanted to be edgy like my mom, but she was riddled with shame, forever bound to confabulation and sleight of hand, secretly living on the hypotenuse. She dangled a polished image, but the plumb line was always off kilter. Mother would leave us children at the lost and found as if it was daycare. Drive her shiny sedan in ever widening concentric circles to the very edge. Lean into conversations out of our decibel range and throw us into the deep end, pretending it was safe. I soon came to realize that hers was no ordinary conspiracy. Tiny molecules would nudge the receptors in my nose, sending a warning signal to my brain. And now, whenever I smell genteel obfuscation, I'm taken back to that certain time and place, my stomach curdling from mother's milk. Second one. Where did it go? Second one is called Virus. The crowd has ballooned by the time we arrive. Mathieu does his wheelie thing, a Cirque du Soleil improv. The multitudes are mesmerized, buzzing with excitement as the rhythmic hammering of the cymbalom and snaking of oboe arpeggios enchant, leading attention astray. I rifle through pockets and half-zipped purses, filling my pouch with every nugget I can pilfer. Sifting through the loot will come later. The crowd gasps and laughs with nervous delight as Mathieu, wheels atop the unicycle, weaving to and fro, losing his balance, threatening to crash into onlookers, and recovering within the very last inch with nothing to spare, thrilling the crowd. The quartier is a mix of exhilaration and danger. Danger when the first onlooker reaches into their bag to retrieve their coin purse, their iPhone, their keys. Their shrieks no longer register pleasure. The pitch a little higher, a little thinner, as their breath is dislocated in their chest, gasping and hyperventilating in panic. One after the next goes off like a pop toaster, catchy like a virus. That's it.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bill, did you send me a bio? Bill, did you send me a,
I don't believe I'm on the list for tonight, Paul.
okay. Excuse me for waking you.
It's okay.
Francine Witt is a flash fiction writer and poet. She has stories coming up in Best Small Fictions 2022 and Flash Fiction America, W.W. Norton. Her flash fiction book, Just Outside the Tunnel of Love, is forthcoming from Blue Light Press. She lives in New York City. Franny.
Thanks, Paul. Nice to be here with everybody. So I have 3 pieces. This first one's called, and these are all flash. I'm not doing poetry. Okay, this first one is called Waiting Outside of the Friendlies. Me and Sasha, all dolled up like Barbie. Sasha all gooey with lust and black eyeliner. We were waiting for Ted, who would be pulling up in his Army brother's rusty Mustang. We were going who knows where to do who knows what. It was getting dark, like forest dark, like when all the pine trees hover over you and close up into night. Maybe they aren't coming, I finally said, they being Ted for Sasha and Larry for me. The two of them, 19 and danger sexy. Me and Sasha still 16. Years later, I would run into Sasha at the very spot where the Friendlies used to be. I hadn't seen her since her oldest boy's funeral. That was the boy Ted had pumped into her that night so long ago. Her eyes were too puffy for eyeliner now. She asked if I heard that Larry drove himself drunk into a wall. I wanted to tell her I wasn't surprised given how he kept sucking on the beer can that night we all went out. How even though I saw him a few times after, he always seemed like he was headed into nothing, so why not a wall? Instead, I told her no, I hadn't, and I tried not to notice the bruises like purple kisses all up her arm. Too bad about the Friendlies, Sasha said. I hate how things always change. And then she asked if I needed a ride. Ted'll be here any minute. And this time, I knew for certain he would show up, even though I was wishing he wouldn't. This one's called Dad Always Looked Like a Mountain, or a billy goat climbing the mountain, or a group of climbers at the top of the mountain, all of it huge and not speaking to us. Mom shrugged and made breakfast. She would ask the mountain if it wanted coffee, even though it never answered her, of course. How could it? Mountains have no mouths, billy goats have no words, and the climbers can't waste their thin air breath on my silly, hopeful mother. My brothers and I were all used to it. Dad on the evening couch, sports humming the TV, evening newspaper moving up and down across his snoozy chest. Later, we knew the billy goat part of Dad would eat the newspapers, but not before the climber part checked the newspaper to see if there was a story about them. One night, though, Dad didn't come home. We all pretended to be sad, but we knew it was a party. Mom stringing the walls with crepe paper, relieved that Dad wouldn't eat it. Happy that she could stop asking a silent mountain if it wanted coffee every damn day. Happy to block out the climber's constant chatter and high-fiving. Only my brother, sitting in the corner, seemed sad for real, his almost hoof growing inside his Converse sneaker, though we didn't see it. His face going sullen and rock craggy, his fingers quietly climbing his chest. And the last one is called Balance. My father was 20 feet tall, so there's that. My mother built him a special house in the backyard. She had to cut away all the trees. Life is balanced, she would say. Good days, bad days. It's still your life. Don't scrunch up your nose at not one part of it. My father would stick his huge hand the size of a couch cushion through the window at mealtime, and my mother would load it up with plates of bacon or hot dogs or chops. He'd blow her a kiss and take the food back to his house in our treeless yard. The hardest part, my mother said, was that this was the only time she saw him anymore. He didn't fit in our house, and her going to my father's house in the backyard only reminded her of her favorite trees. Soon the other women showed up, lines of them, all of them having heard about my 20-foot father, all of them curious about, well, you know. My mother didn't worry. She would sit in a rocking chair on the front porch. She would sit there except for mealtime when my father would show up again. She would sit there and rock back and forth in the balance of love, then not love, then love. Thank you.
Thank you, Franny. Jonathan Cardew is the author of A World Beyond Cardboard, ELJ editions. His stories appear as if by magic in Passages North, Wigleaf, Best Microfiction 2021, and other places. Originally from Sheffield, UK, he lives now in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jonathan.
He seems to be missing. He was just here.
Well, where can we find him?
Maybe he's knocking at the door. Maybe he's slipped out and he's asking to come back in.
That's exactly what's happening.
Paul, maybe you could read a story while we wait.
Maybe I can let Jonathan in.
Ah, so close, so close.
Jonathan, I locked you out somehow. So I read your bio, but I'll read it again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got booted out. Well, is it my entrance? I need some entrance music.
Yes.
You don't need to read it twice. I'm sick of it already. But yeah, thanks, Paul. I like the bomb behind you. It's very bomby.
It's an experiment.
Is it? It's great. It's great. Yeah. Well, thanks. It's great to be here again, and it's been a while. And it's nice to see lots of familiar faces and names throughout my years with Flash. And I haven't been writing for the last few months because I've forgotten how it goes. How do you write? How do you submit? I don't have anything in Submittable at the moment, so it's a bit terrifying. But it's nice to be here and hearing some words and read some old ones as well. So I'm going to read two flashes, and these are one single sentence flashes, because who needs punctuation? First one is called In Andromeda, and this was published in Fractured Lit. there were aliens in Watchia, Iowa, aliens with platinum skin and tentacles, adept at probing populations, aliens opening up minds and internal organs, flaying off skin and sinew with minimal host damage. Aliens who knew their work was little more than basic administration, data entry, if you will. The sexier aliens flying off to supernovae and spiral nebulae, slinging atomic splice guns and all that jazz, hunting for dark matter clusters and foundations of the universe kind of stuff. But that didn't bother these admin aliens, these data scouring aliens, these pop you over the head and really try to understand you ones, because they liked the scope of work in rural Midwestern areas. The sky was big and the topography was never undulating. Minds fell open like dried corn husks, revealing stars and island universes. And the weather was nice. The wind whistled over fields of poppy and soy. The sun melted into a pencil flat horizon, just one sun, always dissolving. So no, they were not down in the dumps about their lot in life, their mission to log sentience, punching in numbers on triangular devices while the Mavericks hopped wormholes in Andromeda. Because sometimes a local would awake in the middle of a data collection session, eyes peeling open and uncertain, analyzing, figuring it all out, this corner of a corner of a corner of a diminishing galaxy. All right, that's one. It's a lot of comma splices. Okay, this one's called Supernumerary. This one was published in Passages North. Remember, we used to deposit our bodies at the credit union. Parts of our bodies we didn't need anymore. Earlobes and fingernails and gallbladders. Paraphernalia, really. Frilly bits and bobs, doubles of things, triples. Like who needs 2 testicles, for instance? And who needs not 1 but 2 eyebrows? Really, eyebrows are for decorative purposes. They punctuate the face. They can be used for suggestion, like when you used to raise your eyebrows all the time, just subtly, like what was all that about? But then we shaved those suckers off and placed the hair into bank slips, and there was no more suggestiveness after that. And in any case, you can suggest in other ways, like with your mouth and your lips, and also you can just say things out loud, which you did. So we kept up vocal cords. You're a very good singer after all. We used to sing in the shower together after sex, songs I don't recall anymore. Wait, no, I do remember. We used to sing them bones, them dry bones on repeat in harmony, which is ironic because we were in the wet of the shower. But bones do stay dry in the shower, don't they? Presumably, as dry as they can with all that meat and blood swimming around in there. But we never did deposit any of our bones into the credit union. It seemed a little ridiculous to do so, even though I did express a desire once to remove the bones from my little finger, just to get in there with my X-Acto knife and to saw away at the ligaments and cartilage and whatever else connects bones, makes them what they are, makes us upright and good stewards of the planet, and generally individuals who have made sound financial decisions, because ultimately that is what we wanted, fiscal security. We wanted to watch our deposits grow, 4 eyebrows becoming 796 eyebrows, 2 gallbladders becoming so bloated from wealth, you'd mistake them for small hippopotamuses with no eyes, no ears, no squat tails to whip away the flies as the sun set on another blisteringly gorgeous day on the savannah. Thanks, everyone.
And that was great. Thank you. Folks, that's our show. Good reading tonight. Thank you all.
No Mirsky?
Possibly.
I have your bio right here.
Here we go.
Um,
Is that a yes?
Yeah, but I'll probably regret it.
Paul Beckman's flash fiction collection, Kiss Kiss, from Truth Serum Press, was a finalist for the 2019 Indie Short Story Award competition. Paul was nominated by Citron Review for Best Microfiction 2020 and had a microstory selected for the 2018 Norton Anthology New Micro Exceptionally Short Fiction. He was one of the winners in the 2016 The Best Small Fictions, and his story, Mum's Goodbye, was chosen as the winner of the 2016 Fiction Southeast Editors Prize. And he was one of the winners in the 2022 Microfiction Anthology. He's been published in the following magazines, among others: Litro, Playboy, Pank, Blue Fifth Review, Matter Press, Jellyfish Review, Thrice Fiction, Spelk, Red Fez, and Literary Orphans. Paul curates the monthly F-Bomb Flash Fiction reading series via Zoom. Our host, Paul.
I can't live up to that. I'm sorry. Okay, well, this is just going to come out with no explanation. Snookums. The kangaroo in my pajamas lying cuddled up with my wife Elaine. This was the last straw. Hey, I yelled, get your fat kangaroo ass off my bed and out of my house. He laughed his kangaroo laugh, and dove under the covers where he appeared to be going down on my wife. Pay attention, Mirsky, you may learn something. I ripped the cover off, and sure enough, Elaine was giving the kangaroo a hand job and sucking on his tail. A half-dozen baby kangaroos spilled out of his pouch and sat watching. I reached under the bed and grabbed my Louisville Slugger that I kept for emergencies and whacked the kangaroo across his back. He looked at me and said, "You're such a killjoy." I said, "I'm tired of this fucking kangaroo showing up willy-nilly anytime he wants something, including taking my wife, drinking my booze, and eating my food." The kangaroo jumped up, assumed his boxing position, and I knew he was in trouble because we've gone at it before and he came out ahead every time. I thought this time might be different because of the bat, but he slaps the bat out of my hand and jabs me twice in the face and then throws a right uppercut to my jaw. "Come on, Joey's, let's go someplace we're wanted." 10 minutes later, the kangaroo comes back in the house, throws my pajamas at me and said, "The least you could do is wear silk. These cotton things don't do it." Elaine said, "You have to ruin everything good in my life, don't you?" "What do you mean ruin? You were in bed with an animal." "Well, if you were a little bit more of an animal, I wouldn't have the kangaroo hanging around all the time." "What do you mean all the time? How often do you get it on with a kangaroo?" I'm not going to dignify that with an answer. He wants me to leave you and go live with him and the Joeys. Do you know how crazy that sounds? Beanbag, beanbag, beanbag. Oh, now you're playing our safe word card. Elaine picks up her cell phone with the chime Mirsky hadn't heard before. "The answer is no, Lester Snookums. We've decided to work out our problems, and please don't call me again." "Sure, what is it? You want my best friend's number? Not on your long-tailed life." "Snookums?" Mirsky asks. "His name is Lester Snookums. Come to bed. Change the sheets first. A real animal doesn't need clean sheets." I told you you'd regret it. Thank you.
Great one, Paul. Thank you for reading.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening and not leaving. You guys are all great. I appreciate you coming to Connecticut on a night like this, especially you, Sandra, and you, Karen.
Thank you, Paul. It was lovely.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed this.
Really nice
Yeah.
reading. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Super fun.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
yes. Thank you, all of you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Peace.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye.
Thanks, Paul again. Cheers,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.